go back to our more sustainable, more returns.
Right.
That's a great tagline, by the way, that we may use.
Well, hello and welcome to The Stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy consultant doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And we are thrilled to be joined by Avent Bezuidenhoudt, who is the head of investment at Earth Capital. Avent, great to see you and thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. Yours is genuinely one of my favorite podcasts. So
you don't just have to say that because you're on
the
podcast.
No, I'm really actually not.
Hey, Avent, this podcast is over now. We're just going to close with that comment.
Yeah, we can just use that as the loop, right? Continuously, like, this is my favorite podcast in water, and we just repeat it time and time again.
You use it as your ringtone on your phones.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's brilliant. Really brilliant. Okay.
You've got to be careful now. You've given us that testimonial because it will be everywhere, right? The website, the YouTube, the LinkedIn. So, but anyway, really great to have you on the show, Avent. I know we've certainly over the past, I guess, year to 18 months have sort of got to know each other a bit more, found out a bit more about Earth Capital. I know you and Will have had many different conversations with the different investors' hats on. And we'd love to sort of hear more about, firstly, your origin story, what brought you to the role of Earth Capital. I think your kind of first impressions on the water sector, and then really a unique part of the offering from Earth Capital is the Earth Dividend assessment tool. So yeah, where to start really? I mean, I think first of all, how did you come to the world of water? What was your kind of entry into Earth Capital?
Yeah, so I think I'm probably very different to lots of the people you've had on the show before. I've seen some incredible people with this really long history in water. My background is really on the tech invest side of things, and with working with growth businesses. I was in private equity before that, in corporate finance before that. I got the opportunity, one of the founders, Gordon Power, I've known for about 10 years. And when he asked me to join Earth Capital, it was, this moment where your passion and your job collide and you get to do both at the same time. So really lucky to come across to Earth Capital, which is a thematic sustainable investor. Our three focuses here around energy, food, water. We had someone focusing on the energy side. We had someone focusing on the food side. And actually the water was probably a little bit of the Cinderella and a little bit unloved, unlike the sexy sectors. So I started learning more about water. And I have to say, genuinely, the more I learned about it, the kind of sexier it actually became. It's so fascinating. It's really complicated. The opportunities from an investment point are huge. It needs so much investment. It's clearly been underloved. And I think what's been amazing is coming into this sector, and the way I got to meet you two is just I'd meet one or two people and they'd go, oh, you want to invest in water? We should introduce you to this person and this person and this person. And everybody has been so welcoming, so eager to bring people into the sector and to teach me, to introduce me to others that can help me find those deals that we're looking for. And I think it just screams out about how underloved the sector has been.
That's a great point. I think most people in the world of water find it to be, a collection of good souls, people that, certainly want to make money and succeed and have a drive, but there is that impact side, the belief that this is a noble venture in really solving some incredibly painful, social and environmental and economic issues.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think this whole issue around, water problems are environmental problems. I think everyone's been focusing on the energy, but actually we're just seeing it more and more. I'm South African. You may be able to tell by the accent. But South Africa is kind of known for a few years ago when Cape Town nearly ran out of water because there was such a water scarcity issue. And about 3 weeks ago, they had the most incredible floods and everybody's without water in their homes for 2 weeks. It's such a complicated problem, and finding technologies that can mitigate it is going to be a real challenge, but really exciting at the same time. So
I think it's really interesting how you mentioned you've got those three strands: energy, food, and water, and you described it as perhaps a Cinderella, the unloved child.
Yeah.
Do you think now you're the kind of the biggest fan of water within Earth Capital, and perhaps it's been a learning exercise for the fund as well?
Yeah, totally. It's I think I became really enthused about it. I think I started off doing it as a job and then became more and more impassioned by it. So I think it becomes really easy to tell everyone about it and to start talking about it and to really get excited and to bring people on board. And I think the more we see the effects it's having and the more we're seeing it as the way, climate change is hitting everyone the hardest, the more people are starting to go, okay. I think there's some really sexy little tech companies coming along as well, which of course gets everybody really excited if you're looking for new things to invest in. And I really hope that the more we can invest in those companies and find the stars, the more people are going to look to develop other solutions as well.
100%. Well, I guess it helps by speaking to a lot of passionate entrepreneurs wanting to solve water. I know, Will, in your work and with the fund you're building and mentoring startups, especially with me interviewing and writing, it's not that we want to use the word infectious in a COVID pandemic, but I mean, their enthusiasm is truly infectious with these founders, purpose-driven founders, entrepreneurs wanting to solve water. It's truly, I think, one of the most exciting areas to report on and speak to. So no doubt through your work, Avent, from speaking and doing your due diligence on multiple founders, that's kind of rubbed off as well, right?
Totally. I like to understand what brought them to the sector as well, and what excites them about it. It obviously, I'm seeing more as well is other people kind of coming up with a solution and then going, well, what sectors can we learn? Could we take this technology into? And when they start to discover more about the water, it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Complicated, but interesting.
It also, for me personally, reminds me that there is, and I don't like the word hope, but there is reason to believe that there is a community of people that are committed to solving these problems. So, a self-proclaimed optimist. And those are important data points that, wow, this kid just showed up and had this great idea and it's brilliant. And how do we support, him or her, or whatever it may be. So, it goes back to your comment about the community. It's really an exceptional community and one that really does believe that they can contribute to solving some of these really profound challenges.
Absolutely. And for us, it's been quite exciting as every now and then we do get the odd application for funding, where it's a company where we're seeing the energy, food, water truly combine into one solution. Or finding a way to combine different companies in our portfolio, possibly to cover solutions that cover all three. I think with the sort of circular economy, finding a way for all three to work together is going to be very exciting.
Because you've invested into a farming company, I believe, from looking at your portfolio. And previously, I know, Will, we've had a vertical farming, was a startup, but now it's scaled up beyond belief. And that's the kind of the perfect sweet spot between something that uses ultimately less energy, less water, but is producing food as well.
Exactly. I've also seen some things around the sort of land-based fish farming, which is an area we're kind of treading carefully, learning more about. But I do think from a feeding the world solution. It has potential. But again, energy, food, water working really closely together, especially where you can have it recycling, renewing as well, and within a circular economy there.
Definitely. So talk to us about some of the, because it's a bit of a cliche, right? I mean, as an investor, you're looking for the founder or the CEO that can take it to the next level. You're not just investing in the solution, you're investing in the individual, right? And that crosses over regardless of energy, food, waste. So talk to us about how you kind of see that in water and some of the founders, entrepreneurs you may have met and spoken to so far.
Gosh, I think what's interesting is to try and find that solution. A big thing for us is about how do we take this into new geographies, and we look for growth potential through global expansion.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that's really interesting with water, it's not just going to be every solution is going to fit every environment. In one place, we need to find some kind of solution for reducing the way water is affecting the place. Another place we need to save water, so it's this complicated thing. But it's nice when you get a CEO or a founder that understands the potential of where their business could go and understands, we had this discussion before, Will, where everyone assumes that the UK has got plenty of water, but the reality is not right. Okay, we have areas that are going to have issues in the UK. So how do we get that technology into new places? How can it be used to solve this customer pain, is the word we like to use internally.
I have a question. You brought up something that's really interesting that I think has always perplexed me. How much flexibility you're seeing as you engage with founders and CEOs to rethink their position and be creative in terms of bundling other companies, sort of a roll up to add additional value when it gets that, energy, water, food nexus opportunity, which is enormous value for obvious reasons. So are you seeing a fair amount of openness and creativity with the companies that you're looking at?
Obviously, it's difficult it has to work financially and economically. The concept, if it makes sense, they can see why it makes sense. If it's good for the business, if it's good for the world, if it's good from a sustainability point of view, there is potential to create something new. And actually, when I talked about the fish farming, one of the companies a really exciting one I've seen down on that side was actually brought to me by another water purification company that had started to come up with a new solution for this company and went, you should speak to these guys. We're speaking to them. You should speak to them too. So there it's a potential for how do we cross over those? And something we are seeing with one of our companies now, one of our water companies is proprietary, which is the low water flush toilet. So, it's always quite amazing. I think people don't always appreciate the fact that every time you flush, it's 12 liters of drinking water going down the toilet. So they only use about 1.5 liters of water each time. But when we do our measurement on our companies with our Earth Dividend, which is our assessment tool that we use in-house, but it's about the fact that company does so much good, but it does rely on ceramics. So ceramics are always going to be bad. They're always going to have a bad impact. Okay, we can't stop that. And the worst is the better this company does, the more ceramics it's going to need to manufacture, right? So something we've been looking at with that one, and this is something with our Earth Dividend, we do an annual assessment and we report on it each year, and we look for continuous improvement in our portfolio companies to make them more sustainable. So this is something we're looking at. Some of the solutions we've had there so far has been around what used to be 3 or 4 pieces of plastic is now 1 piece of plastic, and it's made from recycled plastics. We're looking at with the ceramics, but then something we've been talking about internally, there's constantly new kind of materials being developed, especially on the sustainability side. If somebody out there comes up with something that is going to be a really strong alternate to the ceramics, then perhaps that's a company we need to look at investing in and use it in our toilets. So if anyone listening has got something, get in touch.
That's brilliant.
I think that's really interesting, right? Because you mentioned the Earth Dividend tool that you use as part of your due diligence before investing into a company, right? So I was looking into this before the interview, and it's 5 different areas: natural resources, ecosystem services, pollution, socioeconomic, society, and governance. So it sounds as if this can give you a granular level the impact of the materials a company is using on their supply chain.
Yeah, full supply chain, and right through to end of life as well, because that's something I think we all need to give more concern to as well.
And this tool you've developed in-house, right? This is your own proprietary due diligence tool that you can use.
Yeah, absolutely. With our Chief Sustainability Officer, Richard Barrett, he was one of the people responsible for this. And it's great because we do it before as part of our due diligence before we invest. And what's really interesting is Richard, as our Chief Sustainability Officer, does have a veto over any investments if if it's just not something that can be made sustainable, is not sufficiently sustainable, and the impact is not going to be enough. He has a veto over investments. So we have that, and then we do it on an annual basis across the portfolio as well. And it's for each year we come up with what are the main issues this year, where can this business be made better in the next 12 months? And that becomes an action plan for us and for management to improve that business.
Can I just interject? My jaw dropped. I think that Richard could be the most powerful Chief Sustainability Officer I have ever heard on the investor side. No, this should be broadcasted. And, as an example of, if you really are serious about sustainability, then this is how you govern and enable, empower a chief sustainability officer in terms of making decisions that, he or she believes is in the best interest of the fund and the companies. I think that's profound.
Yeah. And it is important. And, I believe we're seeing it more happening now anyway. We've always had this attitude at Earth Capital of the more sustainable a company is, the better it is financially. I think before there was always an attitude of you either had a sustainable investment or you made some money out of it, whereas for us, we're going, no, the more sustainable, the more financial profit you can make. There is a huge transition coming that we all need to make. And the more sustainable we can make our businesses, the better we can do. When it comes to selling those businesses one day, I think we're going to have more and more and more focus in the due diligence on exit on the impacts of our companies. And the more we can make our companies sustainable, the better they can manage their own risks and the better that we could sell them for as well, because it's not going to be these huge issues that come up on sale that either makes the deal fall over or causes the price to get cut right down.
I think it's really interesting that you return to this assessment tool every year. So, because I guess historically you could say that when a company reaches a certain scale and they look to reduce operational costs, maybe look for cheaper parts sourced elsewhere, this is potentially putting a cap on that happening, because then they have to keep their supply chain 100% sustainable and robust regardless of the growth.
Yeah, and if you take something like Propylair with the ceramics, as so far we haven't found a truly better solution, but it means that every year we go back to it and it's always on our to-do list, and it's constantly in the back of our minds. I think it's quite easy with a business to start off, when you first invest and go, we're totally going to do that. And when somebody, is first going in, everyone's keen, everyone's enthusiastic, and yes, of course, we'll do that. And then it just gets forgotten as time goes along. So this does focus our minds. And as the world around us changes and becomes more sustainable, the more, we'll be able to find solutions, but we constantly check in and we're constantly on a journey to make our companies better. For me, it's a real value add that we give our companies.
100%. It sounds like there would be enormous potential to license the Earth Dividend to other investors if it's been refined, developed in-house based on investors? But obviously that's a different business model offering.
Yeah, that is. I know it's something we are looking at, chatting to people about.
Is it fair to assume that the use of your Earth Dividend tool for potential investments and then your portfolio companies, as you refresh this on an annual basis, is leveraged and enhances their ability to build out a value proposition around ESG reporting?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it highlights the areas that need to be focused on more. I think, we all talk about materiality. I think it highlights in each individual company what materiality means and what we should be focusing on, and what ESG impacts are the most important for that particular company.
I think there's value in companies, regardless of whether they're going through Earth Capital's books and being a portfolio company, in running through this due diligence anyway. I mean, it sounds ridiculously quite comprehensive, an assessment at a granular level on these different elements to see how they're actually faring as a sustainable business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think overall it makes good sense. Do you know? I don't know how better to say it. Something I'm really passionate about as well, and that I love with using this tool, is, for me, I know there's all the bad news stories and nasty venture capitalists come in and steal your company and all the rest. And I'm a true passionate believer of the power of venture capital and private equity for good as well. And that I think if you work well with your management teams, you should bring the money and you should bring added value. And you should give more into, be able to increase the value of that company by enhancing it. So this is a way for us to add that real additional value besides just the money we can bring to the table.
Well, it has to be a partnership, right? Inevitably, a two kind of win-win partnership, both sides. And we had a really interesting conversation with Bessie Swartz, the founder of Cloud to Street, on the recent episode, talking about a blended approach to investment, where she had a mix of kind of smaller boutique sustainable funds that are really purpose-driven, but actually there's a need for perhaps less boutique sustainable focused, bigger private equity companies more interested in the return. But actually that mix, she acknowledged each have a place to help her company get from kind of startup to scale up. Yeah.
And probably slightly different that, I go back to our more sustainable, more returns.
Right.
That's a great tagline, by the way, that we may use.
Yeah, I mean, Elise, if you're listening, there you go. There's one for marketing.
But that's a forward-looking statement, so we need to be careful about that. But as an investment thesis, I completely concur.
Yeah, we are FCA regulated, so
that's why I threw that in.
Yeah.
We got you covered.
Your investment can go up as well as down.
Right.
So then what kind of excites you, Avent, looking forward then, in terms, now you've, I guess, got under the bonnet of water, you've seen the different tech and the developments, kind of looking ahead, you mentioned about Propeller and a farming company you're involved in. What kind of because when we met several months ago in London, you said you're having conversations with, I guess, more pure play water technology companies. And obviously we're not asking you to name those particular companies, but is there anything else you see that particularly excites you?
Yeah, obviously the digitization side of things is just so exciting. We're seeing, and it's large scale, small scale. My concern always is, I think the water industry, selling a small company, selling into those really big water boards in big companies like that is slow and painful. Right. So they need, that's something that's going to need help. And I think we need more like water focused accelerators to help that happen and to make those introductions. I think that's going to be super important. I like stuff around the house. I know, Will, again, you and I have talked about this. It's right. Like, what can we do within the house to make things work? If Propeller currently is only focused on the commercial markets, from motorway services to fast food, things, shopping malls, hospitals. We are looking in the future, we would like to bring that into the home as well. And again, if you think of in your own home, every time you're flushing, if you're saving 9 or 10 liters of water, that's massive, right? Across. And again, that also leads to lower carbon emissions because there's less processing required. But if we could now, that 1 liter of water could also be what you washed your hands with earlier, or what, from your washing machine or something, even more incredible, right?
I completely agree with you. I mean, it's sort of flipping things around from, centralized systems to, hyper-local extreme decentralization, which in a lot of ways is much more actionable. If you can bundle the right technologies, create the right incentives, then you can have an impact at a, very micro scale that then you can replicate potentially faster than you could if you were, starting at the centralized scale, moving to localized neighborhood and so on. So it's a really interesting play, and I agree with you. It's very exciting.
And then obviously the water purification. We're seeing, again, we've seen somewhere adoption can be slow, but I think there's some really clever sort of circular economy type stuff coming out again on the water purification. We've seen a lot of action in China. Real drivers, that seems to be clamping down so hard on, the fines and the punishments for getting it wrong, that we're seeing a lot of demand in China for water purification, which will be interesting. And I think the rest of the world has to start clamping down more. I think it's the only way you're going to do it when it comes to water purification. People just have to stop doing it, right? Like, you just can't be dumping stuff in rivers that you shouldn't be. I think America may do that occasionally.
Well, we're both based in the UK, right? So currently it's very topical in the news, but yeah, maybe we can't possibly comment over the Atlantic, Will, right? But
well, nothing like that happens in the US, so I'm appalled. Luckily, I'm shocked and appalled to hear this.
Very good. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the final topic, and this is something that I guess, Will, we've discussed with previous investors, and I know with Gaetan from the European Water Accelerator, we've had conversations. Absolutely. Absolutely.
As far as someone that's doing so much for small tech companies, shout out to Gaetan, because she's incredible.
Yeah, 100% agree. But we had this conversation about whether there's a potential for a pure play unicorn from Europe as a water technology company. And there seems to be a lot of people kind of sitting on the fence, whether that is, a $1 billion valued company from startup through venture capital funding. I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether you think that is, whether you agree, disagree, whether you think that's possible.
Ooh.
What are your thoughts?
It's got to be possible, right? I just hope I find it.
Yeah, everyone wants to find the unicorn, right? But
it's got to be possible. It has to be. That's what makes our job so exciting, is to try and, kind of keep looking for it.
But I think what you mentioned before, like something that crosses not just within the utility side, but also to homes, to decentralize, that has the potential to go beyond a piecemeal sale by sale utility approach. That could be not that you should chase a unicorn, of course, but I mean, that could be the way for scalability to reach that sort of financial level.
Yeah, that'll be the one, possibly. We said earlier about we need those stars to start coming out, because as soon as you see a real star in a sector, that'll make other people go, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that sector, or I need to consider other options in that sector. That sector becomes full of potential. And right. That's a motivator to get those people out there. I have to believe that it's out there, because it has to be the driver for all of us, to bring more money into the sector, to bring innovation into the sector. Mm-hmm. We need those successes.
That was a great question, Tom, by the way. and it made me think that maybe not across every, industry opportunity, innovation opportunity, but if you did focus on energy, water, and food,
right,
there's enough value creation there. If you focused on digital, there were so many examples of digital companies that have done extremely well very recently. So, perhaps not every innovation sector, but, maybe a couple, maybe three. I don't know. That was an interesting question.
Great. Well, we really appreciate you joining us, Avent. Is there anything we missed? Anything you kind of want to shout out to the audience of the stream?
No.
Kind of final thoughts?
I guess if you're not in water already and you're an investor, come on in. It's the water is warm.
There you go. Come and dip your toe in the water. It's a good place to be. There you go.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, yeah, really appreciate your time as always. Good luck with the continued journey at Earth Capital. And I think, the dividend tool is really great sort of internally driven innovation that, will inevitably, I think, direct your investment towards true sustainable companies. So, yeah, appreciate your time. Will, any kind of final comments from yourself?
I am so encouraged to hear that a chief sustainability officer has that power in the marketplace. So kudos for that. That's awesome.
We like to live what we do.
I like it.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks
stuff.
so much for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining, everyone, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Fantastic.
Be well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.